Alrighty. Okay, welcome back to the read through the NIV Chronological Study Bible series. Today we are going to pick back up in the book of Exodus. So let's go. The Exodus. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Up, leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds, as you have said, and go and also bless me." The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise they said, "We will all die." So the people took their dough before the yeast was added and carried it on their shoulders in kneading troughs, wrapped in clothing. The Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. Then the Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and they gave them what they asked for, so they plundered the Egyptians. Egypt and its gold. It's doing a refresh. It kicked me off a sec. Hold on. Almost there. Just a little further. Well, I made it some ways, huh? There we are. Alrighty. Egypt and its gold. This is based on Exodus 12, 35, and 36. Gold and silver were considered precious metals. From the beginning of history in Egyptian society, the king, or pharaoh, as he was called, had the power to concentrate wealth for himself. According to Egyptian custom, when kings or queens were buried, their treasure went with them into the ground. This custom sometimes allows us to see from an Egyptian tomb what kind of wealth the deceased ruler possessed, of which gold was usually included. Such was the case when archaeologists discovered the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh, Tutankhamun, with its treasure intact. The tomb contained all kinds of furniture, clothing, and other articles. The coffin of the king himself was made of solid gold about 1/8 inch thick and was over 6 feet long, weighing 243 pounds. That's insane. Or about 4 talents. The wealth of Tutankhamun's tomb is indicative of the wealth that the Hebrews must have observed while in Egypt. Tutankhamun became king in 1336 BC, which places him about 100 years before or after the Hebrew exodus from Egypt. The date of the exodus is debated, but scholars locate it at either 1446 BC or later around 1275 BC, when the Hebrews had an opportunity to take something of Egypt with them. Egyptian gold must have been hard to resist. Exodus 12, 35, and 36. Now it's got a good picture of the Pharaoh's coffin. It looks like that. That's actually the cover of King Tut's coffin. That's also why that picture is used most of the time when referencing King Tut. Now here's a transition point between Exodus 12 and the next part of Exodus. The actual date of the Exodus, so this is based on the Exodus beginning. The actual date of the Exodus has been much debated. The two most frequently proposed possibilities are about 200 years apart. First, in the 15th century BC, during the reign of Tutmosis III in 1479 to 1425 BC, and second, in the 13th century BC under Ramses II in 1279 to 1213 BC. The 15th century dates fits the numbers given in 1 Kings 6:1, which places the Exodus 480 years before Solomon's temple, which would be about 1446 BC. The 13th century date, around 1275 BC, seems to better fit other evidence the building of the city of Ramses mentioned in Exodus 1:11, but requires understanding that 480 years of First Kings as a symbolic number. Both dates place the Exodus in times of clear Egyptian supremacy. However, and this may be the essential point, the fact that the book of Exodus does not name the Egyptian king, the very fact that so frustrates historians, is peculiarly, there we go, that's a hard word for me to say, peculiarly appropriate in a book that tells how the ruler of the world's greatest empire is humbled before the mighty arm of Israel's God. Exodus 12:37 through 18:27. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth. There were about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them, and also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. With the dough the Israelites had brought from Egypt, they baked loaves of unleavened bread. The dough was without yeast because they had been driven out of Egypt and did not have time to prepare food for themselves. Now the length of time the Israelite people lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, all the Lord's divisions left Egypt, because the Lord kept vigil that night to bring them out of Egypt. On this night, all the Israelites are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for the generations to come. Passover restrictions. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "These are the regulations for the Passover meal. No foreigner may eat it. Any slave you have bought may eat it after you have circumcised him, but a temporary resident or a hired worker may not eat it. It must be eaten inside the house. Take none of the meat outside the house. Do not break any of the bones. The whole community of Israel must celebrate. A foreigner residing among you who wants to celebrate the Lord's Passover must have all the males in his household circumcised. Then he may take part like one born in the land. No uncircumcised male may eat it. The same law applies both to the native born and to the foreigner residing among you." All the Israelites did just what the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day the Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt by their divisions. Exodus 13, the consecration of the firstborn. The Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me every firstborn male. The first offspring of every womb among the Israelites belongs to me, whether human or animal." Then Moses said to the people, "Commemorate this day, the day you came out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, because the Lord brought you out of it with a mighty hand. Eat nothing containing yeast. Today, in the month of Aviv, you are leaving. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you are to observe this ceremony in this month. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, and on the seventh day hold a festival to the Lord. Eat unleavened bread during those 7 days. Nothing with yeast in it is to be seen among you, nor shall any yeast be seen anywhere within your borders. On that day tell your son, I do this because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. This observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead, that this law of the Lord is to be on your lips, for the Lord brought you out of Egypt with his mighty hand. You must keep this ordinance at the appointed time year after year, after the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites and gives it to you, as he promised an oath to you and your ancestors. You are to give over the Lord the first offspring of every womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock belong to the Lord. Redeem with a lamb every firstborn donkey. But if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem every firstborn among your sons. In days to come, when your son asks you, "What does this mean?" say to him, "With a mighty hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed the firstborn of both people and animals in Egypt. This is why I sacrifice to the Lord the first male offspring of every womb, and redeem each of my firstborn sons. And it will be like a sign on your hand and a symbol on your forehead, that the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his mighty hand." Crossing the sea. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea, also known as the Reed Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, because there is reeds along it. This is Yom Shom, which literally translates directly to the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt ready for battle. Now, this next part is a commentary. The road through Philistia, Exodus 13, verse 17. There were three ancient routes between Asia and Egypt. One route went from Elath near Ezion, Gebar, 1 Kings 9:26, across the Sinai Peninsula to the area of the Suez, around the city of On, Heliopolis. Another route stretched from near Beersheba in the Negev to the area of the Suez. The route most commonly used, however, especially by Egyptian armies, was the road through the Philistine country. Exodus 13, verse 17. In Egypt, this roadway was called the Way of Horus, named for Egypt's earliest state god. The Way of Horus was a coastal route that left Egypt from the northeast. It ran along the northern reaches of the Sinai Peninsula and along the coast of Canaan. If a traveler was going toward Damascus, he would cut inland, passing Megiddo, and then down the Jezreel Valley to Hazor, and from there cross into Transjordan. More northerly destinations would continue along the coast. The route did not actually lie within sight of the Mediterranean Sea, since the land closest to the water was marshy. Instead, it lay inland, a few miles where the soil was firmer. The biblical name, Road Through the Philistine Country, alludes to the coastal area where the Philistines lived and through which the Way of Horus passed. From the point of view of the Israelites, the Way of Horus came and went through Philistia, and was thus the road through the Philistine country. In later times, when the Philistines were not a distinguishable people, this route was known simply as the Way of the Sea. In Isaiah 9, verse 1. The route of the Exodus. Two routes have been proposed for the exodus of the Israelites. From Egypt, a northern route moves east from Ramses along the northern Sinai coast. The southern route passes Succoth, continuing to the lower region of the Sinai Peninsula. Now it has a little map of the area of the path that they would have taken. And it looks like that. So you got Ocean, you got Egypt, you got Ramses, Pithom, Succoth, Migdol, Etham, and all the major cities that are in this story. And it goes all the way through, and they follow the path this way. This is the Gulf of Suez, the Gulf of Aqab, and the Mediterranean Sea. And the Dead Sea is right up here. Now, let's continue with the scriptures. This is Exodus 13, verse 19. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, because Joseph had made the Israelites swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. Thank you for staying on, the two viewers that are on. If you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to answer them. Or if you have any insights you'd like to state as well, put them in the comments below. After leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day, the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Exodus 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi Haroth, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, what have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services. So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots along with all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh's king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi Hahiroth, opposite Baal Zephon. Now it has a little commentary here about the science and technology of those chariots. Egyptian chariots were the finest in the ancient world. They were small and light, carrying a driver and one passenger. Exodus 14 verse 6. The wheels were about 40 inches in diameter and 7 feet apart for stability. The floor was a half circle in front and straight in back along the axle. When the floor was made of woven leather, it provided some suspension for the riders. Now it also has a little time capsule between the year 1625 to 1600 BC. 1625 BC, we see chariots being used by the Hittites. In 1600 BC, we see chariots introduced to the Nile Valley. In the 1600s BC, we also see the labyrinthine palace of Knossos, Crete. And then in Minoan palace of Phaistos, Crete, also was found in 1600 BC. Now, 1600 to 1400 BC, we see the existence and the thriving civilization of the zenith of the Minoan. Now, let's continue in Exodus 14, verse 10. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved them in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side, so neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. 2 dates for the Exodus. Now, 2 dating schemes have been proposed for the Exodus from Egypt: an early date and a late date. The early scheme considers the 480 years of 1 Kings 6:1 to be a precise note of time. The late scheme considers it to be a symbolic figure, not an actual one. A 15th century Exodus, when approximately 1446 BC. Ruling Pharaoh Tutmosis III in 1479 to 1425 BC. Reasons: 1 Kings 6:1 states that the Exodus occurred 480 years before Solomon began building the temple. Solomon, who reigned from 970 to 930 BC, began the temple in the 4th year of his reign, about 966 BC. The Exodus would then have occurred 480 years before 966 BC, placing it in 1446 BC. A 13th century Exodus. When approximately 1275 BC, ruling pharaoh is Ramses II in 1279 to 1213 BC. Reasons: Exodus 1:11 states that the Hebrew slaves built the supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. Egyptian sources suggest that Pharaoh Ramses renamed the city of Ramses after himself. The 480 years of 1 Kings 6:1 is a symbolic number representing 12 generations of 40 years each. Now, Exodus 15. The Song of Moses and Miriam. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. God among the warrior deities. Exodus 15, 1 through 21. The Song of Moses and Miriam in Exodus 15, 1 through 21 is a victory song like those sung in many cultures in the ancient world. God is praised as a warrior going out to fight for Israel. In the faith of the ancient world, armies did not go to battle alone. The deity or deities of the army fought in heaven and on earth against the opposing army and its gods. Nearly every culture had a deity of war. The Canaanite goddess Anath bedecked herself with parts of corpses from slain soldiers. The Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar led armies, along with the patron deities of the warring cities. All gods who were responsible for particular cities were expected to be able to defend their territory. So Israel's God, bringing his people out of Egypt, is depicted in song as having defeated the army, and thus also the gods of the Egyptians by himself. The use of water to destroy enemies is ancient. Songs about the defeat of the Sumerian city of early in the second millennium BC tell about floods and roaring rivers sent by the gods to destroy the city. In Israel's song, God picks up chariots and riders and throws them into the water like so many toys. Exodus 15, 1 and 4. The language, symbols, and imagery of Israel's song are those commonly used for war deities in the ancient Near East. Israel's enemies, near and far, are terrified. Exodus 15, 14 through 16. Terror or fear was assumed to be a separate substance which went before the deity, defeating enemies even before the god arrived. The people of the victorious deity was established in their proper place, and the winning god is enthroned as ruler over the vanquished deities in Exodus 15, 16 through 18. The peoples around Israel would understand such phrases familiar to ancient civilization. Thus they would recognize the victory song of Moses and Miriam as praise for the work of a warrior deity, who is mightier than any other deity, who among the gods is like you, Lord. Exodus 15:11. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger and consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging water stood up like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue them, I will overtake them, I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them, I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? You stretch out your right hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as stone until your people pass by, Lord. Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. The Lord reigns forever and ever. When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophet Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with timbrels and dancing. Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The waters of Mara and Elim." Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled into the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. Marah means bitter. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became fit to drink. There the Lord issued a ruling and instruction for them and put them to the test. He said, "If you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 20 palm trees, and they camped there near the water. Exodus 16, manna and quail. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Moses in the promised land, based on the early Exodus. So here's a little timeline based on the early Exodus. So we have Moses is born in 1526 BC. Now in 1500 BC, we have Moses fleeing Egypt, Exodus 2:15 and Acts 7:23 in 1486 BC. In 1450 BC, we have Aaron, and 1446 BC, we had, actually, let me do 1445 first. In 1445 BC, we see Caleb and others spy out the land. In Numbers 13:2 and 3, and Joshua 14:7 in 1445 BC. Now in 1446 BC, we have Aaron and Moses appearing before Pharaoh in Exodus 7:7 in 1446 BC. And Moses leads the Israelites from Egypt in Exodus 12:31 and 37 in 1446 BC as well. Then that follows with the 1445 BC, which I had already said. It's kind of blurry. Caleb and other spies on the land in Numbers 13:2 and 3 and Joshua 14:7 in 1445 BC. Now come in the 1400 BCs, we have in 1406 BC, Aaron dies on Mount Ilor near Kadesh Barnea in Numbers 33:38. Moses gives his final speeches on the plains of Moab in Deuteronomy 1:3 in 1406 BC. And also in 1406 BC, we see Moses dies and is buried in Moab in Deuteronomy 34:5 and 6 in 1406 BC. And then shortly after in 1400 BC, we see that Caleb receives Hebron as an inheritance in Joshua 14:7, 10 and 13, 1400 BC. And then following that are the 1350s, which comes the next part. Now there's also Moses in the Promised Land based on the late Exodus period, which just changes the dates. So here it has that Moses is born in 1355 BC. And then in 1315 BC, Moses flees Egypt in Exodus 2:15 and Acts 7:23. Then Aaron and Moses appear before Pharaoh in Exodus 7:7 in 1275 BC. And they also, in that same year, Moses led the Israelites from Egypt. And then Caleb and others spy out the land in Numbers 13:2 and 3 and Joshua 14:7 in 1274 BC. And then Aaron dies on Mount Hor near Kadesh Barnea in Numbers 33:38 in 1235 BC. In that same year, Moses gives his final speeches on the plains of Moab in Deuteronomy 1:3, and he passes away and is buried in Moab in Deuteronomy 34:5 and 6. And so Caleb then following in 1229 BC, which this was stated in Joshua 14:7, 10, and 13, that Caleb receives Hebron as an inheritance. And those are the time frames. that we have here that we know of based on our different calculations. Now let's continue. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites in the evening, You will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we, that you should grumble against us? Moses also said, You will know that it was the Lord who, when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses told Aaron, Say to the entire Israelite community, Come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, What is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent. And then here's a little picture of quail, a little painting of quail. Those also fell from heaven as well. The quails that fell upon the Israelite camps are most likely a migrating flock. When the tired birds landed to rest, it was easy for the people to catch them. The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little, and when they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, No one is to keep any of it until morning. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. The leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is the Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it in the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the sixth day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the seventh day. No one is to go out. So the people rested on the seventh day. And their daily life and customs. The 7-day week, with its rhythm of 6 days of work and 1 day of rest, based on Exodus 16:30, is revealed in Genesis 1 and in Exodus 20. The early Assyrians and the Egyptians divided time into periods of 10 days, while the Sumerians used 7. They recognized the number of planets was 7, but this is not necessarily the reason for the length of the week. So that's just a little interesting tidbit then, if it's not a necessity for why the Sumerians had their weekdays as 7 days instead of 10. Now going back to the scripture. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, This is what the Lord had commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I give you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt. So Moses said to Aaron, Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it, and place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come. As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law, so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah. An ephah. Exodus 17, water from the rock. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" So Massah means quarreled, and Meribah means tested. Here's an image that displays a similar feeling of the rock protruding water. And this is a waterfall. The Amalekites defeated. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "Because hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation." Exodus 18. Jethro visits Moses. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and father-in-law of Moses, heard of everything God has done for Moses and for his people Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro received her and her 2 sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses said, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." And the other was named Eliezer, for he said, "My father's God was my helper. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh." Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wife, came to him in the wilderness where he was camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent word to him, "I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and to her 2 sons." So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and then went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships they had met along the way, and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the land of the Egyptians. He said, "Praise be to the Lord, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods, for he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly." Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people came to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Moses' father-in-law replied, What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice. And my God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonesty gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses put the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. Now we have a transition point into Exodus chapter 19. This next part is going to span from Exodus 19:1 all the way to the end, Exodus 40, verse 38. Transition. At Mount Sinai. The Israelites arrived at Mount Sinai in the 3rd month following their exodus from Egypt. Exodus 19:1. Here they would remain for several months while God's glory rested on the mountain. They completed work on the tabernacle in the 1st month of the 2nd year of the Exodus. Exodus 40, verse 17. Thus 1 year after leaving Egypt. Exodus 12:2 and 3. Now Exodus 19:1 through 40:38, beginning in Exodus 19 at Mount Sinai. On the 1st day of the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain, where the gods live. Sacred mountains. Exodus 19:2 and 3. Where heaven and earth met, humans and deities could come together. On the physical landscape of the ancient world, this meant mountains, since ancient people thought deities actually lived on the peak of a sacred mountain. They built temples or altars on or near the mountain in honor of the gods. So it was all over the Near East. The Canaanites and Phoenicians believed their gods lived on actual mountains near their cities. At Ugarit, El lived on Mount Zephon. In Exodus 19:20, Israel's God Yahweh lives on Mount Sinai. Later, the Judeans believed Yahweh took up his residence on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, while the Samaritans said he lived on Mount Gerizim near Samaria. In the flat river valleys of Mesopotamia, worshippers of various deities built their own mountains called ziggurats. The most famous ziggurat was that of Babylon, Etemenanki. The appearance of the deity, called theophany, at the sacred mountain often was accompanied by thunder, lightning, earthquakes, clouds, loud noises, lesser deities, and terror. Many of these characteristics are present in the description of God coming down on Sinai in Exodus 19, verse 16 through 19. Usually only priests were willing to risk experiencing such presence of the god. The actual appearance of the deity itself was thought to be dangerous to people who had not properly prepared themselves. The people of Israel were carefully prepared for the visit of God to the mountain. Exodus 19:10 through 13. Despite preparations, they were too terrified to actually meet God, and so Moses served as intermediary between God and the people. Exodus 19:23 through 25, 20:18 through 21. So let's get back to Exodus chapter 19. We're in verse 3. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession, although the whole earth is mine. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by their third day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, 'Be careful that you do not approach the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. They are to be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on them. No person or animal shall be permitted to live. Only when the ram's horn sounds a long blast may they approach the mountain." After Moses had gone down the mountain to the people, he consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. Then he said to the people, "Prepare yourselves for the third day. Abstain from sexual relations." On the morning of the third day there was thunder and lightning, with a thick cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. Now, the geography and environment of the area is this. The Sinai Peninsula is a triangle of land between Egypt and Israel, about 125 miles east to west and 200 miles north to south. The traditional location of Mount Sinai is in Exodus 19, verse 18. It is toward the south at Jebel Musa, a mountain 7,500 feet in altitude. This tradition is not early. The peninsula as a whole is inhospitable desert land. Now, getting back to it, Exodus 19, verse 20. The Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. So Moses went up, and the Lord said to him, "Go down and warn the people so they do not force their way through to see the Lord, and many of them perish. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out against them." Moses said to the Lord, "The people cannot come up Mount Sinai, because you yourself warned us. Put limits around the mountain and set it apart as holy." The Lord replied, "Go down and bring Aaron up with you. But the priests and the people must not force their way through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them." So Moses went down to the people and told them. Now we're in Exodus 20, and this is where God tells Moses the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments. And God spoke all these words. "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." That's the first one. "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below." So no gods before the one only God, no gods before Yahweh. No images, so no idols. This isn't saying images such as, "Hey, I have a picture of God on my wall for me to remember him." Or I have a picture of Jesus on my wall for me to remember him. Or I have an icon. Or I have a picture of my family on the wall. This is specifically talking about idol worship. "You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents, to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." Now, religion and worship. In this time, almost all ancient worshippers had statues of one or more of their gods. The Israelites were the outstanding exception to this rule. Exodus 20, verse 4. When Pompey the Great entered the temple in Jerusalem in 63 BC, he and his men were deeply impressed that they found no image of God in sanctuary. "You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, or your son, or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. This isn't just you shall not kill, because killing in sake of capital punishment, killing criminals, is not the same thing as murder. Killing in self-defense is not the same thing as murder. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. And you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Oops. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. You shall not covet any of their things. When the people saw the thunder and lightning, and heard the trumpet, and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you, to keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. Idols and altars. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites this: You have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourselves gods of silver or gods of gold. Make an altar of earth for me, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, your sheep and goats and your cattle. Wherever I cause my name to be honored, I will come to you and bless you. If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it with dressed stones, for you will defile it for your use on a tool on it. And do not go up to my altar on steps, or your private parts may be exposed." Exodus 21. These are the laws you are to set before them. Hebrew servants. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. But in the 7th year he shall go free, without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. But if the servant declares, "I love my master and my wife and children, and do not want to go free," then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorpost, and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he shall be his servant for life. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is to go free as male servants do. If she does not please the master who has selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, he must not deprave the first one of her food, clothing, and martial rights. If he does not provide her with these 3 things, she is to go free, without any payment of money. Personal injuries. Anyone who strikes a person with a fatal blow is to be put to death. However, if it is not done intentionally, but God lets it happen, they are to flee to a place I will designate. But if anyone schemes to kill someone deliberately, that person is to be taken from my altar and put to death. Now, time capsule. This time capsule is based on the year 1595 BC. Now, in 1595 BC, we see many things. The Hittite king Marsulis I sacks Aleppo in northern Syria. We also see Marsulis I ends the old Babylonian dynasty of Hammurabi. And in 1595 to 1000 BC, we see the Middle Babylonian period. And lastly, in 1595 BC, we see Agum II ruling Babylon as the first king of the Kazite dynasty. Now back to the scriptures. Anyone who attacks their father or mother is to be put to death. So this isn't just an unruly kid who's not behaving. This is a kid who deliberately attacks and goes after their parents. Anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to death, whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. Anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. So in this case, this isn't just cussing at them or being angry with them. This is cursing damnation and spells and things like that upon their name. It's the opposite of blessing. Anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death, because it is an extremely immoral thing to do. If people quarrel and one person hits another with a stone or with their fist, and the victim does not die but is confined to bed, the one who struck the blow will not be held liable if the other can get up and walk around outside with the staff. However, the guilty party must pay the injured person for any loss of time and see that the victim is completely healed. Anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result. But they are not to be punished if if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. Now, some people say this is allowance for abortion, but premature birth happens all the time. I was born prematurely by a whole 2 months. I know people that were premature by a whole 3 months. So it's not just a premature birth. This is premature birth. It is not abortion. It is not allowance for abortion. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman as she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. If you injure the woman or the baby, this is the punishment that you get. If you seriously injure or maim or kill the baby or the woman, this is the direct result of that. Now, culture and society of the time. The law that requires a penalty equal to the damage caused by the crime is called lex talionis. This is the Latin term that means law of retaliation. The idea is familiar to most people through its expression in the Hebrew Bible in Exodus 21:24. Some ancient codes called for penalties greater than the injury to be repaid. Now, Exodus 21:26. An owner who hits a male or female slave in the eye and destroys it must let the slave go free to compensate for the eye. And an owner who knocks out a tooth of a male or female slave must let the slave go free to compensate for the tooth. Now, this is the context directly that shows that you can't, if you have a slave, if you have an indentured servant, you cannot just beat them at will as long as they can recover. If you cause any serious injury, whether that's blindness or whether that's knocking their teeth out or whether that's breaking their bones or whatnot, you are to let your servant go free. If a bull gores a woman or a man to death, if a bull gores a man or a woman to death, the bull is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten. But the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of goring and the owner has been warned but has not kept it penned up and it kills a man or a woman, the bull is to be stoned and its owner also is to be put to death. However, if payment is demanded, the owner may redeem his life by the payment of whatever is demanded. This law also applies if the bull gores a son or daughter. If the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull is to be stoned to death. The bull that gored in Exodus 21:28-32. Certain laws found in the law of Moses concern subject matter that is treated quite similarly in the laws of ancient Near Eastern cultures. One example is the law dealing with a bull that gores a human, causing personal injury or death. This we can find in Exodus 21:28-32. A goring bull law was not unique to Israel. At least 4 other ancient Near Eastern traditions had legislation on the issue. The earliest appearance of bull goring laws comes from Eshnunna, an early Old Babylonian period site in circa 2017 to 1793 BC, and the Diyala River in Mesopotamia. Such laws are also found in the Code of Hammurabi, a set of legal promulgations from Babylon, circa 1792 to 1750 BC. In these laws, there is no stipulation to stone a bull that gored habitually. The owner, rather, was heavily fined, especially if the bull had not been previously dehorned. In Israel, owners were also fined, 21:30-32, but the bull was stoned, 21:28. Other examples of bull goring legislation show that such laws existed over a long period of time. One letter comes from the old Babylonian city of Mari on the Syrian side of the Euphrates River. The Mari tablets date from around 1813 to 1760 BC and demonstrate that goring bull laws were actually put into practice in Syria, Mesopotamia during the time of the biblical patriarchs. Another letter from Nuzi in northern Mesopotamia places similar laws a few centuries later, in circa 1450 to 1330 BC. Apparently, Israel shared in a tradition of laws that were common in the ancient Near East. In the case of the goring bull laws, Israel in the old Babylonian culture shared the principle of negligence and liability. Owners who failed to safeguard against potentially dangerous situations were held responsible in Exodus 21, verse 29. Now, Exodus 21, verse 33. If anyone uncovers a pit or digs one and fails to cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the one who opened the pit must pay the owner for the loss and take the dead animal in exchange. If anyone's bull injures someone else's bull and it dies, the two parties are to sell the live one and divide both the money and the dead animal equally. However, if it was known that the bull had the habit of goring, yet the owner did not keep it penned up, the owner must pay animal for animal and take the dead animal in exchange. Now, that's where we're going to end for today. Tomorrow we'll be going on into Exodus 22, the protection of property. But this is the law being laid out. So you got Genesis, which is the creation into the patriarchs, into the establishment of Israel, Israel's descendants. And then you got them escaping Egypt in the Exodus and the first laws being laid out. So this is like the establishment of the ancient nation of Israel. And then you've got Leviticus, which is all the priestly laws. Now, a lot of people try to say that some of the laws in there don't apply to us today, but a good amount of them do. Especially like homosexuality, sexual immorality, stuff like that. A whole lot of those do, because we are all priests of the Most High. The Most High is Jesus Christ and God the Father. And we were all made priests of him through his blood in reconciling us. But in tomorrow's live stream, we are going to go through Exodus 22. But I have to go. So I hope you guys have a great one. I'll end us off in prayer. Lord, thank you for all you do for us. Thank you for dying on the cross, and thank you for being here for us. Thank you for blessing us each day with our food and blessing each day with what we need. Lord, I thank you for all that you do, and I hope that this was insightful for those that did stop on. But for those that didn't stop on, I hope that they stumble upon this video, because it is very useful in their walk and understanding the historical background behind the faith. And it's on your precious, holy, and powerful name that I pray. Amen.